I'd like to introduce Maureen, our mistress of ceremonies here.
Fishtails has been going on for about 2 years. Tonight we have a very tight lineup. I have to say it's the first time I've ever had to say no to a storyteller, and that disturbs me because I love to include everyone. And hopefully tonight we'll start to roll. You'll have a wonderful time. We have about 11 storytellers, and we're really tight on time, so let's go. Our first storyteller is one person. Oh, and by the way, Lauren Mason here is the timekeeper. So for all storytellers, make sure you keep your eye on Lauren. Our first storyteller has been with us in so many shows, and we love her support. Please welcome Cindy Szymanski.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday the 13th. Good theme. So mine is luck, superstitions, and fairy tales. Yes, superstitions, like how I need to hold my paper because it's my good luck charm. Really, it helps me focus instead of fainting on stage. I can't use a rabbit's foot because I love animals. And I'd be thinking of poor Bugs Bunny or Roger Rabbit. Friends have wished me good luck tonight, so I have to be careful that I don't actually break a leg, because wishing good luck is bad luck. This is like theater, right? I don't feel secure speaking in public. Maybe because I've cursed myself by walking under ladders, petting black cats, never continuing chain letters, leaving the pennies on the ground for children and old people, and dating too many 666s. Those devils, the Damians in disguise. The omen stayed the same for all of them. They will come, and they will go, and they will take all they can in the process. Some people use the cliche, if it weren't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. I, however, have come to terms with the fact that, in the dating department, my stupidity ranked number 1. Other than my husband, any day I met a guy was bad luck. It didn't matter what day and number of the month it was. My experiences consisted of addicts, badasses, connivers, narcissists, and bullshit artists, most of whose minimal vocabulary consisted of support me, feed me, put up with me, because it's all about me. They say bad luck comes in threes, but mine kept adding up. I should have been in the clear after Leave 'em Steve, Georgie Porgy, and Tony Baloney. But no. Don Juan, Willy Nilly, Dump 'em Dan, and Schmo Gigolo invaded my space like Snow White's psychotic sidekicks, although not at the same time. I should have known I was doomed when, instead of living the belief that beginner's luck is good, my beginner's luck with boys was really bad. My first prince took me for a ride in a stolen pumpkin. He didn't have a pot to piss in, but smoked plenty of it. Ours was a short-lived tale. I lost my heart, and it wasn't returned to me like Cinderella's shoe. And I was left to feel like useless soot in the fireplace. They say if a bird comes in your window, it brings bad luck. How about the cuckoo who came in my front door? What I thought was an inherited disadvantage of mental illness turned out to be hallucinations induced by cocaine highs. Wishes on 100 shooting stars could not stop him from putting that stuff up his Pinocchio nose. Speaking of noses, when mine itched, I thought it was allergies. Turns out it was my clue that I was going to kiss a fool, have a fight, or receive a gift. 2 out of 3, unless you consider grief a gift. They say if it rains on your wedding day or you step in poop, it's good luck. Ha! One manipulative charmer had the audacity to tell me that I knew what I was getting into. But like Rapunzel, I did not choose the home with no door to escape. I did not willingly get into his psychological prison. Nevertheless, since I did not shake the magic 8-ball or ask the Ouija board, I had no idea of the deep doo-doo I was getting into. Stepping in that was not good fortune for me. In fact, it was rather messy. So maybe I jinxed myself after that one by not wanting to date. I would think I'll just find another control freak or loser. I should have knocked twice on my hard, stubborn head. I tempted fate, and it fought back, bringing me a friend to have fun with. But unbeknownst to me, he was a closet crack addict. Crack of all things. As a child, I would not step on the lines on the sidewalk, because don't step on the crack or you'll break your mother's back would ring in my ears. Who thinks of those things anyway? Like children don't have enough boogeymen under their beds to burden them. Oh, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the dumbest of them all? Me, and me, and me, and me. I reiterate from the broken pieces. I was still a magnet to misfortune, like Little Red Riding Hood was the main course to big bad wolves. With the next one, I needed a field of four-leaf clovers to rid myself of the marijuana-smoking alcoholic maniac. The only time he wasn't running his mouth was when his lips were around a bong or a bottle of Captain Morgan. Mr. Woe Is Me had an itchy palm and found luck rubbing the feet of his well-to-do ladies. But he cried wolf too many times to the wrong woman, and his embellishments got him evicted. Coincidence that I pick losers? No. Some soul-searching produced a child psychology epiphany about my evil stepfather, who turned up the ace of spades a long time ago. I learned that I had to let the past go and get on with a more positive future. So instead of crossing my eyes at the thought of the last ex, I crossed my fingers. And along with some me time and my newfound peace, this sleeping beaut woke up and decided not to meet any more bad apples. So currently, while some people are consulting their crystal balls, I look into my heart and see that I deserve better. And I finally found it. Thank you, honey. Now I believe the good fairy tales can come true.
Thank you, Cindy. I've got the Cindys up here tonight. Cindy Hendrickson. Please welcome Cindy.
What do they say? You should pretend that people are naked in the audience, but I couldn't see you anyway because I can only see close up, which is odd for my age. But anyway, so bad luck. So some people are born under a lucky star, right? And I was born in the middle of a hurricane, throes of a hurricane, on Labor Day with 3 kidneys. And my parents weren't too happy about that. My father had to carry my mother over these trees and kind of get me to the hospital, and all I ever heard was bad things about, I threw up from the minute you were conceived till the minute you were born, blah, blah, blah. But so they named me Cynthia after Artemis. I always say her name wrong. Artemis, the goddess of the moon, which means radiant and glowing, which obviously is a pretty good thing, right? So, but I don't know, from there, it was, there was a Hurricane Cindy, which I've been named for Cindy, but that was in much later than I was born, well, like 6 years later, but she was in Northeast Florida, and she quickly downgraded to a tropical depression. So after this winter, tropical, even if it's combined with the word depression, starts to sound pretty good. So the whole thing about the 3 kidneys, it's not really bad luck. It's just that doctors didn't discover my extra kidney till I was like 3 or 4. So when you see baby pictures, everybody looks happy, and I'm like crying in every single baby picture that has ever been done of me. Oh, damn, gosh, this is not easy. So I ended up with 1.5 kidneys when they figured out blah, blah, blah. But, that's not a bad legacy to have, right? So there's a lot of other expressions. My mother used to say, unlucky in cards, lucky in love. Well, that didn't quite work out either. My favorite toy when I was a kid was like a bride doll, because I was just so looking forward. All I wanted to do, people in my generation, like you become a teacher or a nurse in case, God forbid, your husband dies. Well, I never quite got even to that part, from the bride doll to not having anything. But where was I going with that? See? Anyway, it's just another unlucky thing. But I unlike my namesake, like my Greek namesake, at least, who was also, besides being the moon goddess, she was the hunt goddess, and she was the goddess of virgins. Well, I kind of got in the game, but I just kind of lost. So whether that's bad luck or, poor choices, that's whatever, that's to be considered. So, So you obviously, you don't need to break a mirror to have 7 years of bad luck, but I believe that I've just had kind of 7 years of bad luck. It started with, I left my job to take care of my mother, and she had cancer. And then, so after leaving my job, 3 months later, my mother died. I ended a relationship I was in, and I had a townhouse rented. So all of a sudden, I had no job, no mother, no place to live. What's the fourth thing? There were four things, but there should be only three, right? All right, so I would say, what would Mary Lincoln, how I know how she felt when they said, okay, Mrs. Lincoln, how, other than that, how was the play? Not for nothing. So, all right, blah, blah, blah. So, I left, I said, blah, blah, blah. So I moved into my childhood home, which was great. It had lots of baths. It was like 14 rooms of old, people like having stuff from family of 8, blah, blah, blah. And plus with my 83-year-old deaf father, which is still where I am. But so after a couple of kind of grueling years, I thought I got lucky. A friend told me about a ski house in Bethel, Maine. It was for singles, and everybody was a blast to hang out with. So it became my life. It was my sanity. I got out of Gloucester, my childhood, home. It's a great place, but if you go up here, it's different. And just had a really, really great time for, short period of time. And then, so there's something called good luck is start your journey with your right foot, and good luck will walk with you. That didn't quite happen in my case. So it was the end of March, spring skiing, it's great, it's Parrot Head weekend, Jimmy Buffett, everyone's drinking margaritas, but no, I have to say, no, can't we do one more run, just one more, wait. So, that was a great decision, because all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I'm up in the air, I'm smashed down on the mountain, and I hear this cracking in half, and it's my femur I broke. Oh, so, my scream kind of rented the airwaves for a couple of minutes, and next thing I know, boom, I'm in the hospital, yada, yada. So then, so that would be fine. It was great. I recovered. 6 months later, I was skiing again. We had a big celebration the year that I ended up, I could ski. So a week later, 7 days later to the day after that, I'm on the same ski trail. And all of a sudden, boom, my right leg, if I'd started with my right leg, no, with my left leg, my right leg, whoa, goes all the way out, spirals, breaks into a gazillion pieces. So, and actually, okay, so 2 seconds. Okay. All right, wait. All right, so again, out of 184 trails on this mountain, I broke my leg on the same trail called the right stuff. So, and I was with my boyfriend, Brian, and everybody said, oh, you're so lucky to have met a guy who has the same interest in sports that you do. I'm thinking, how lucky am I? Because I broke my leg 2 years in a row with him. Well, I don't know what that has to do with luck, but so it's 2015. I'm going to take it easy. I'm not skiing, jogging. I can only snowshoe and swim if I'm lucky. I still have really lousy balance. And I end up on crutches every so often, tripping, da-da-da. People worried I won't get through airport security, but if I did, who cares? So at 90, my father is frail, again, it's my last year of bad luck, and has a tendency to fall. I spend my days and nights with him, worried about our next move. My car's transmission just blew. My boyfriend and I split for a month. And lastly, but the saddest of all, is my beautiful dog died. So I know, that's kind of a sad part. But so anyway, I just hope this is the end of my bad luck streak this year, and I could use a break anywhere but in my right leg. So thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Cindy. I was going to say we might laugh tonight, we might cry. Thanks for that. Our next storyteller is Paul McGarry.
Hello. You know you're getting on in years when your childhood friends turn 70. So this is a story about when I visited a childhood friend who had turned 70, and it's called Doug. From the garage comes a low growl, then a roar that echoes across the valley to the mountain. A slight squeal as the transmission engages and the vet slides out of its nest and into the yard, near the parked F-350 and the backhoe. Doug has always been a motorhead. My earliest memories of him were of him as a shade tree mechanic. The shade tree in question was a sprawling catalpa on the street in front of our house where he'd park his hulking silver wide-track Bonneville. It was an era of muscle cars and manhood, and all the neighborhood boys idolized Doug. The body's carbon fiber, not fiberglass, he says, same as they use in airliners. The tranny's in the center, better weight distribution. 406 horsepower. He rattles off the specs like other men rattle off the names of their children. He had come back from Vietnam ramrod straight and thin as a rail. It was 1965 before it all started to fall apart. My father, who was definitely not a mechanical genius, became his friend. When lack of maintenance and abuse had brought one of our rusting hulks to a complete halt, Doug would bring over his tools, fixing and tuning and undoing the damage my father had done. At night, they'd sit on a porch, cooling down with a Narragansett. One time, they talked of their wars. My father in an oven-hot tank on Peleliu, Doug in a raucous Huey buzzing over rice paddies and villages in the Delta. He was a door gunner. There were lots of times I couldn't pull the trigger, he said. My father studied the past in the head of his beer and nodded, wordlessly. We squeeze our aging bodies into low-slung seats like astronauts boarding a space capsule. The Corvette throws up a shower of stones as we squeal down the gravel driveway to the road and rumble to the New Hampshire town square. He punches the gas as we turn into the highway. The 18-inch tires grab like Velcro and throw us around like crash test dummies. I cinch the three-point belt more tightly. The car races down the two-lane blacktop. The astronaut seats swallow us up and drive us deep as the car gathers speed. One day we learned that Doug had married. He did things that way, suddenly and deeply. He wasn't much for agonizing. If there was something to do, you did it. That simple. He shared only what he felt was his to share and yours to know. Children came quickly, first a boy and then a girl. The boy grew into a Huck Finn type, always bringing home treasures from the marsh or the lake. Doug and he went fishing like Andy and Opie. He built an aquarium for kiver and perch. We crossed the Massachusetts line on the crumbling highway. The speed limit says 45. Ahead, a semi cruises along at 60. Doug punches the accelerator. We shoot into the oncoming lane and pass the big rig. The driver fumbles his cell phone in surprise. 90, 100, 110. It'll do 160, he says. That's all right, I say. The boy grew up in his father's world, forest and fields and on his back under a car chassis. But he never quite fit that world. He was bright, but not in a college kid kind of way. He tried trade school, but that didn't fit either. He ended up in the Coast Guard for want of anything better. Alone on the sea, he seemed to have found his place and his peace. In a tiny town in Worcester County, Doug whips the car around for the return trip. He offers me the wheel, but I decline. The car retraces the route, the tack in the speedometer leaning far to the right. Shattered trunks of rotting pine like Greek ruins flash by, and swamps made by voracious beavers. It's early spring, gray and damp and raw, but Doug lowers the window to let the roaring wind rush in. Doug was never one for gatherings. Society's rhythms and minuets were alien to him. He went to those he had to, his mother's funeral, of course, ill at ease and tongue-tied. He avoided all he could, even my father's funeral, though they had been friends for 20 years. I just can't do those things, he said later. Death was something beyond his control, beyond his understanding. When the Coast Guard called and told him the boy had taken his own life, Doug had no answer, nor even a question. He couldn't face the funeral the Coast Guard planned for his son. But that morning he got into the car with its 400 horsepower and its 6-speed transmission and drove from New Hampshire to New London in an hour and change. He was there on the deck when his son's ashes were cast upon the sea. Then he left, abruptly as he came. The car screamed back up the interstate, the ragged wind rushing in the windows. Doug manages the gears and throttles smoothly, deftly maneuvering through standing water, muscle memory trumping the lost years. We slow like a descending jet into the square. The car trots up the hillside home across the valley from the mountain. They'll be selling it soon. The girl has given them grandchildren and they want to be closer. In the driveway, we squeeze our creaking bodies out of the cockpit. Doug lets the car idle, cooling down like a colt. We walk to the front of the car. At the stairs, we reach out to bear hug. Our bellies make it awkward, but it would be awkward anyway. I'm glad you came, he says. It's been too long. We stand a moment looking at the mountain. I nod, and then I go.
Thanks, Paul. I'm really pleased to welcome Adam Kuhlman. Did I say your name right?
Thank you. This story is titled Casing St. John's Church and Other Ways to Avoid Making Friends in Gloucester. In hindsight, it was perhaps naive to think we'd find in an abandoned coat factory in Gloucester, tucked between the railroad tracks, a 7-Eleven, and a public housing complex, coastal New England's version of Melrose Place. Nevertheless, those were our thoughts as my wife and I sped down the Mass Pike in July of 2008, the final leg of our move from Houston. She rummaged through the glove compartment and, with a flourish, produced the lease agreement to our new home. It was a top-floor unit in a brick box, rechristened the Gloucester Mill Condominiums, and a place we'd seen only in underexposed Craigslist images. Yet somehow we conjured a primetime Aaron Spelling soap opera, minus the AIDS and contract killings. This was our fault, a product of overactive imaginations and underactive research. We'd spent our post-college lives in cities with an abundance of luxury real estate. So when we read that Gloucester Mill was located, quote, downtown and consisted of, quote, converted lofts, we filled in the details by extrapolating from the hip urban spaces we'd known. Most of all, we imagined our neighbors. We weren't assuming they'd look like Heather Locklear or Andrew Shue, but it had been 4 somewhat lonely years in Houston, a city where the progressive few fend off the armies of conservatism by huddling behind walls thatched with the wiry salt and pepper hair of Jon Stewart. We hoped that a peaceable blue state would offer better odds for meaningful friendship with folks like us. It shouldn't have taken us long to realize that instead, Gloucester Mill amounted to the longest of long shots. As soon as we arrived, the clues were all around us. Most conspicuously, the signs reading danger, oxygen in use, no open flames. Of the 7 doors between the entrance and the elevator, fully 3 displayed this lurid red and black warning, and 1 was complemented by a motorized scooter parked beside the threshold. But my wife and I were preoccupied. In the lot sat our exhausted Toyota Camry, ticking in the heat and rigged with personal effects, a Japanese-made update on the jalopy from the Grapes of Wrath. We were in no position to notice that our neighbors were, by and large, individuals who could recall the fanfare surrounding the publication of Steinbeck's masterpiece. It's not that I'm opposed to cross-generational friendships. At age 34, already I enjoy plenty of activities associated with the elderly, such as reading, gardening, and positively demolishing boxes of high-fiber cereal. But my wife and I learned that at Gloucester Mill, the relatively youthful were perceived as dangerous interlopers. Not long after our arrival, I crossed the parking lot to address a shrunken woman struggling with an overloaded grocery caddy. Too eagerly, perhaps, because when I offered my assistance, she recoiled in terror and clutched her purse as if it were the world's last box of laxatives. "Help! Help!" she cried, without apparent irony. It's not altogether surprising that I had trouble making friends within the building. I can be grumpy and aloof, and with my pugnacious bearded chin and eyebrows like mustaches, I resemble a pocket-sized Bluto, Popeye's nemesis and a well-documented sexual predator. But my wife is one of those honest-to-goodness nice people you read about in Bible tracts. Her smile, which she offers indiscriminately, takes up the better part of her face. For 2 years, she taught in Watts and managed to win over her students with a combination of absolute devotion and exquisite Southern manners. Yet even she found herself, more than once, on the business end of a four-pronged aluminum cane. There were exceptions, of course. One of our fourth-floor neighbors, a chatty spindle of a woman, kept an eye out for our Amazon packages and invited us to her Christmas parties. Still, it was clear that my wife and I needed to look beyond the mill for companionship. So we joined the YMCA, frequented the farmers market, and even attended services at the Episcopalian Church. My skeptical beliefs notwithstanding, I savored these Sunday mornings. With the big red door flung open to the breeze, I listened to seagulls heckling the liturgy and admired the sunlight glowing through nautically themed stained glass. But eventually we learned that church-going has a different form and meaning up north. In Texas, people attend church because everyone does. It's an opportunity to wear linen, gossip about the truant, and enjoy a tipple of wine before noon. The service itself is just a prelude to the fellowship that takes place afterward, over sagging platters of fried catfish and deviled eggs. But in New England, where church isn't so much a way of life, regular parishioners seem to be a hardcore, studious lot. They listen intently to the sermon, scribble notes, and following the benediction, shake hands with the priest and hot-foot it home to implement his teachings. My tendency to hang around the courtyard, sporting a pastel bow tie, elicited only quizzical expressions from the clergy and lay people alike. What was so natural down south appeared bizarre, even suspicious in New England. Looking back, I worry they imagined I was casing the joint for holy relics or crates of communion wine. As our first New England summer faded into autumn, I started to feel desperate. Yes, we had found camaraderie at our places of employment, but at the warm and fuzzy schools where we taught, people were contractually obligated to be friendly. And most colleagues lived over the bridge in surrounding towns. What we hungered for were local connections, voluntarily bestowed, which would symbolize that we'd truly arrived, that we weren't the tourists or seasonal residents whom we now saw fleeing for warmer climes. And so I began to see potential bonds in the unlikeliest of places. Walking from Gloucester Mill to the Family Dollar for trash bags or a toilet brush, I would pass a dingy garage adjacent to a car wash. Ostensibly, it was a commercial enterprise named Disturbed Creations, which specialized in turning perfectly sensible four-wheel drive trucks into rude metallic beasts that farted jet black smoke. Business hours lasted between noon and 1:30 p.m., after which the young employees would abandon their blowtorches, arrange folding chairs, and pass around a squat red cooler of beer. Often a flinty-looking girl or two would join them to sing harmonies on favorite Limp Bizkit tunes. Meanwhile, the boys held remote-controlled transmitters in their stained hands, sending tiny scale models of their prized vehicles whining through the parking lot. On the surface, at least, I had little in common with this outfit, and they treated my comings and goings with complete indifference. Yet part of me imagined how pleasant it would be to be hailed with some nickname, Bones, or Mongoose, or hell, even Little Bits, and have a cold can pressed into my palm. One afternoon, when I was feeling a little spunky, I screwed up my courage and ventured a head nod to one of the more heavily tattooed gentlemen who was taking a cigarette break next to a completely stripped chassis. He spat on the ground and opened his mouth to speak, and in a way, my fantasy came true. But I admit that bitch-ass punk was more colorful a moniker than I bargained for. As the years passed, my wife and I gave up hoping that any single outlet in town would offer a gateway to an extensive network of friends. The most promising of these one-stop shopping approaches, raising a child, seemed like an awful lot of work. Instead, we resolved to cobble together a social life from disparate materials, to celebrate loose ties as well as strong ones, and most of all, to not grow discouraged. Recently, we moved away from Gloucester Mill and into a house closer to Main Street. We have plenty of space, and we can't wait for temperatures to rise and the roof deck to shrug off its white winter coat so we can host a party. Maybe we'll fill up a kiddie pool and surround it with tropical plants, just like the set of Melrose Place. As long as you don't have murder or adultery in mind, consider yourself and your oxygen tank invited. Thank you.
Adam. I think you nailed that one. Nailed it. Let me next introduce Rebecca Borden.
I apologize for the uniform, but I had to close the store at 7 o'clock tonight and then whiz over here, but plug Ace Hardware. I guess the title of my speech isn't so much about bad luck, but what happens to you when things go bad and how you choose to react to it, which is kind of the same thing. I went to a very competitive high school and worked very hard to get into an even more competitive college, where I found myself in a science class that was 10 feet over my head, and I was treading water in the deep end. It got worse when the first midterms came around, and I had 5 midterms, an essay due, and the stock market crashed. It was Black Monday in 1987. As if that wasn't an omen that I should get out of the sciences as fast as I could. I didn't listen. I struggled through, but man, after that semester, I hightailed it to the arts. The arts were easy. I could do them. Didn't take work. So I did it. That was lesson number 1, that I should have stayed away from the sciences. But I found myself back my junior year in Chemistry 101. And so at this exam that I had when the stock market crashed, the professor came in and says, well, some of you did better than I expected, and some of you did worse than I expected. And he put up a bell graph, and he showed the distribution of the class. And I was like, geez, I thought I did really well on that. I'm good. And there were 2 low scores. I got the second lowest score. I think it was like a 43. And I had never experienced failure like that. And I actually thought I did well, which was even more surprising to me. So I hightailed it out of there, and then come around 2 years later, and I decide to take a stab at this thing called science again, chemistry, which is a mystery. And I found myself failing quizzes, failing problem sets, not getting any of this, but just doing every trickery in the box to get through whatever this I needed to get through, because my freshman year was repeating itself. And it was a class full of all these uppity freshmen, pre-med. Some of them were children of Nobel laureates, which isn't intimidating enough. And I was just, I can't quit. I was at a point where I worked in the registrar's office, and I knew when the deadline was that you could either withdraw passing or just withdraw without failure on your transcript, because transcripts were everything to me then. And I went to the professor, and he's like, well, we got a midterm coming up. And I was like, Professor Lovett, should I withdraw from this class? I don't know if I can do it. And it was just even almost vomitous for me to come up with this type of language and admit it to myself that I'm in over my head again, as if the lesson wasn't learned. And he was like, Rebecca, take the midterm. We'll see how it goes after that. And I was like, okay. So I did the best strategy I could, is I locked myself in the catacombs of the chemistry library for a weekend. And I went back through every single quiz, test, everything I had failed. I reread that textbook. Must have rewritten it myself and all of my notes. And I took that test, and I didn't know how I was going to do. Freshman year, I thought I did fine. No, didn't do so fine. Come around again, the Professor Lovett comes out, and he's like, well, some of you did better than we expected, and some of you did worse than we expected. And I can see all these little whippersnapper freshmen, sons of Nobel laureates, pre-med, I'm going to do it, I'm going to be it. And he put up the distribution, and he's like, I'm not going to give you your tests. It was another bell curve. There were like 2 90s. There were like 10 below 50. I mean, it was just an eye-opening experience that I had lived. And I was like, oh, my God. And Professor Lovett was like, well, I need you to come by my office to pick up your exam. I want to talk to you individually. And I went to a small college where that happened, even in a chemistry lecture hall. So I went to the office, and I kind of looked around the corner, didn't really want to be noticed. And he's like, Rebecca, come on in. So I came in, and I sat down, and I was like, he goes, how did you think you did? And I'm like, C+, which was really hard for me to even come out with. And I was one of the 2 students got one of the A's. So I went on to teach chemistry for 5 years. And I taught chemistry because talent doesn't get you that far. You have to work for it, and I didn't realize that, and I taught that because that's what I wanted to teach my students. The parallel to that is people ask me, what'd you do? And I said, I used to be a teacher. What'd you teach? I was like, you evade it. I taught high school. Like, they think I'm like a cool English teacher or an art teacher. What'd you teach? I taught chemistry, and there's this like, whoa. And then there was like, and then I get this story of like, well, you would have been my chemistry teacher. You should have seen my chemistry teacher. Like, didn't know anything, couldn't hear anything, was blowing up stuff. I mean, everyone has a chemistry teacher story. And the only thing I say was, you didn't have me as a teacher.
Thanks, Rebecca. I wish I had you for a chemistry teacher. I would like to introduce Virginia McKinnon. Virginia is our storyteller in residence, and she's been at, I think, almost every Fishtails, and I have great love for Virginia for all of her support. Please put your hands together for Virginia McKinnon.
Thank you. Well, my story is sort of a Gloucester story, and it's good luck, bad luck, turn good luck. And I'll start off with this Captain Ben Pine. Probably many of you here wouldn't even know about him, because he came to Gloucester when he was only 10 years old. He came from Nova Scotia, made Gloucester his home, and he died at age 70 in 1953. So this is, he was a very colorful character back in Gloucester's history of international sailing, schooning, racing fame. He gained international prominence for skippering the Gloucester sailing schooner, the Columbia, in the International Fisherman's Cup in 1923. Nova Scotia dominated the races with the schooner Blue Nose, and Captain Pine successfully raced against the Blue Nose with his Essex-built Gertrude Tebow in 1931. On one of his races, the actress Sterling Hayden was at the helm. The year was in early 1950s when Captain Pine approached my husband. Bob, how would you like to accompany me and my friend on my sailboat, the Skilligalee, to Nova Scotia, Canada, to see the international dory races? The dory races are traditional each year. It's just before Labor Day, and they're held alternately in Gloucester and Nova Scotia. He invited Bob, he says, and he could bring along a friend. So Bob was very excited to be invited because he had never attended this event before. The day of the race was approaching, and they set sail on a beautiful September day, and all was going well. The 4-man crew were taking turns keeping watch, and suddenly the ocean became very rough, and the winds were howling. Ben Pine stated to Bob, "It's time for your watch." And Bob opened the cabin door, and the wind took his breath away. All he could see was a very angry ocean and huge waves. He quickly closed the door, and they were at the mercy of a fierce ocean storm. The boat's engine became disabled, and they never reached Nova Scotia. They set sail back to Gloucester. Bob's father was very worried, waiting for news of the sailboat. He was afraid to tell Bob's mother that no one had seen or heard from the boat in days. Rumor was that the boat was lost to sea with all hands. Then on the horizon one day, a battered sailboat, the Skilligalee, was seen haggard but in full sail, entering Gloucester Harbor. Ben Pine was grateful to Bob, offering him one of his sailboats, but Bob had to regretfully refuse the offer, as he couldn't afford the expense of having his own sailboat. Years later, the year was about 1958, Bob was at the building center, and he saw a little booklet for 25 cents on how to build a boat. So he scourged the boat yards, and he collected pieces of discarded oak boards, and he also found some rolls of brown paper. I helped him to draw out the ribs, first on paper, and then we traced them on wood. And soon the skeleton of the boat was built in our backyard. His dad had him charge marine plywood to the building center, and all were attached with brass screws. He didn't use any nails at all. Then Bob steamed the boards. He took all my scatter rugs, and he had a big barrel in the backyard. We used to burn the trash in the backyard, so we set a fire under the barrel, filled it with water. And he was able to steam these boards to fit the frame of the boat. Then he complained to the building center that some of the wood had split. So they gave him 3 rolls of fiberglass cloth and some resin paint to waterproof the boat. Our backyard became the social gathering place for the neighborhood. Well, our neighbor, Brian Doyle, he found a 7.5 horse engine that had been in the water probably 2 years, and he offered it to Bob. And so Bob took the engine. We took it all apart. I wrote to the Johnson's Motor Company and got the catalog, and we ordered all the parts that couldn't be used. And Bob put the engine together. And they were all taking bets on whether the engine would run or not. But it did. It ran in the first try. That was the first try. And Bob had his boat at last. Well, we bought life jackets for our children, and even my brother-in-law, Tom, he enjoyed water skiing on our boat, which was named Pisces after my son Michael's horoscope. Well, bad luck, unfortunately, when we purchased our new home, Bob traded in his wonderful boat to my brother-in-law, Rick, to do some landscaping on our property. But later, Irma Renewal, they took over Bob's independent machine shop. And Frank Rose of Rose's Marine, he bought all the old machinery. And with some of his share of the purchase price, Bob had Frank put a down payment on a 21-foot Grady white cabin cruiser from Brown's Yacht Yard. And the boat had a inboard, outboard, Evinrude with 65 horse engine. Had 2 bunks, a sink, and a head. And my son Mike, he was only 15. He was too young to drive, so I accompanied him to the boating courses. We took the Coast Guard course and the Power Squadron. We were both certified because he was our main navigator and caretaker. Mike also became accomplished in scuba diving. Most evenings, my family would walk down to the Cripple Cove Marina, and we would cruise under the Cup Ridge and down the Annisquam River to watch the beautiful sunsets. My children loved swimming at Winship Beach weekends when we anchored the boat. And my son Mike and I, we had a clamming license for $2. And we'd enjoy a meal of fresh steamed clams and watermelon and corn coming home from our boating adventure. So bad luck turned to good luck.
Thank you, Virginia, so much. I want to see if Dara Callahan is here. Is she here? I didn't get a chance to meet her, but she's on my lineup. And if she's not here, Shep, where are you? Over here. Shep, get up here.
So I wanted to thank Short and Main for the drinks. Oh. Oh, you've got my credit card. Okay. Well, forget that happened. So those of you who know me may be forgiven for not knowing that I was a Beverly High School football star, hero, sex idol. What's so funny about that? Because I wasn't. But I did play. Did play football. Play is a funny word. I think it's more wage than play football. Wage football. And I was a 140-pound, not very fast. Played strong safety. If you were running the ball, what you were more afraid of was than being tackled by me was being impaled by my bones. But I had two things going for me. I was really mean, and I had a death wish. So, anyway, I played defense most of the time, but there was one time that I will never forget, and I don't think anybody else will either. When we were having a scrimmage with a neighboring town, and they put me on offense, running the ball, and I didn't think I'd ever get to run the ball. And so we had a couple of downs, and we were doing okay. And then my number was called, and I got to run the ball, and I ran. And there was a big hole, and I ran through the hole, and I ran. And I think I avoided a couple of tacklers, but that may not be right. I think I may just have run the ball all the way to the end zone. And I was in the end zone. I scored a touchdown in the end zone. And I did my dance. I did my little dance. And I thought, and everybody was back there, 40 yards back, and they were all, getting ready for the next play, and the coach was there, and everybody was there. And I thought, that's good, but wait till they see how I can throw the ball. So here I am. Good luck, right? Good luck. I scored a touchdown. Here I am, a defensive player, and I scored a touchdown. So I'm going to throw the ball back to them. So I haul back, and I throw the ball, and it's like a ballistic missile. And it's going up, and it's going up, and then it reaches its apex, and then it's coming down at like 25,000 miles a second. And it hits the coach in the face. No joke. Call the medic. Breaks his glasses. Cuts his cheek. Let him sit down. Find his glasses. The scrimmage is over. The practice is over. My football career is over. But actually, they let me continue with football. It was my senior year, and I needed the credit for my college applications. But they never let me touch a football again. Thank you. Paid for it, I better drink it.
Thank you, Shep. Next up is Stan Brillman. And can we just give him all a quick happy birthday on Friday the 13th? Please. They
Thank you. That doesn't cut into my 5 minutes, does it? Okay, good, thank you. I actually was born on Friday the 13th as well. So I think what's so fun about this experience is how many stories from what we've heard so far, we internalize and think, oh, wow, I could tell my football story about when I was in 7th grade and they tripped over my face mask, and I hear, tackle by number 42, Stan Roman, when they tripped on my face mask. And then chemistry. I know our chemistry teacher left, but I could tell some great bad luck stories from organic chemistry. But I have another story. There's a Zen parable from the East in which a farmer loses his prize horse, runs off, and his other farmers come up and say, oh, such bad luck. And he says, oh, bad luck, good luck, who's to say? I think a lot of these stories kind of have some of that because I'm hearing some good luck stories woven in there. My story is about from 2002 to 2012, I was on the board of directors of an international student travel organization called Global Explorers. And we took high school, junior high, and college students all over the globe. And partway through, we decided to begin providing opportunities for blind students. And so I designed a Sounds of the Amazon recording expedition in which we took blind and sighted kids paired. It was just a wonderful opportunity. Such good luck all the way through that. It's about a 2-week trip, recording sounds. And in fact, I'm going to cue Rainforest Ambiance. Jennifer, my wife, has it pulled up. I was going to hold it up here and let it waft through there because that was also my 5-minute timer. We'll see if that starts filling the space, maybe not. Oh, there we go. So these are sounds recorded by the students in the field in the Peruvian Amazon. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was the sighted kids describing what they were seeing to the blind students in just a wonderful way. And I had been to this neck of the woods a couple times before, and there are these beautiful, brightly colored poison dart frogs. And so I had really wanted the students to see one. This is kind of what they look like. This is a plastic cast of one, but I needed a prop. So they look kind of like this. And the last day of the 2-week trip we were there, the team had gone out. We had deployed some microphones that recorded all night long. You know, the tropical forests of the Amazon basin are such a rich hotspot of biodiversity. And when you first go there and you look, everything is just kind of green. And that biodiversity is actually best understood and comprehended through your ears and not your eyes. And so it was a very rich experience for all of us. We deployed these microphones every day, every night, brought it back, listened to them. And I got up early the last morning to recover the microphones. And I saw this trail that I hadn't been on before. And just out of curiosity, I walked down it. And there was a pit that was about 8 by 10 feet. And I looked in there, and there was the garbage pit where the lodge that was about a quarter mile away would dump all their stuff. And hopping around in there, because of all the flies that were attracted to that, were 2 or 3 different species of poison dart frogs, including this one great big female. Female frogs are usually larger than the males. Beautiful, and I thought, I've got to get that. And the garbage was only about 4 feet down there, and so there was a sapling on the side of it. So nobody knew where I was, and I thought, oh, what could go wrong here? So I lower myself down, holding onto this thing, and as my feet go through the garbage, the whole surface kind of goes, and my boots fill up with what is not water, but something wet. And I realized that I have no idea how deep this is. I thought it was 4 feet deep. It's not. I reach into my pocket. The last thing I do is to throw my wallet and passport up and out. I figured they'd be able to identify me from that which is left up there. And I let go and drop into this chest deep. So it was the garbage. It was also where they dumped the compost buckets from the composting toilets. It was, and so I thought, this is how I'm going to go, and what a way to go. We had seen some venomous snakes on the trip, and I was immediately worried about those. This is not a venomous snake story. But immediately a tarantula crawls out from in there, and I pick up a piece of garbage and skewer it against the side, and I'm freaking out at this point. And I literally, I don't think I'm going to make it. I start calling for help, and for 45 minutes I call for help. 46 minutes, a macaw answers that had been hand raised by the local Yagua community, and from the treetops up there it goes, ah, and I say, help, ayuda, ah. And way back at our lodge, the guide is sitting there at breakfast wondering where I am, and he hears this bird calling. He says, something is going on with that bird. So he wanders around, and then he hears me calling for help. He comes in. He said, how did you fall in there? And I said, I didn't fall. I climbed in. He said, I'm going to go get a ladder. I knew what he meant by that is I'm going to go get everybody else to see this gringo who climbed into the pit. So a little bit later, he comes back with a ladder. I climb out, and I start to tell the story. Well, I saw these frogs, and I really wanted to show them with the students. I climb out. I take my boots off and dump them out. And then one of the other guides looks down, and he says, Trivitatis. Trivitatis is the species name of that large, beautiful poison dart frog. And there was a large female there, and that's what I wanted to get. And so I looked at them. I said, don't pull the ladder, I'm going back in. I need to catch that frog. I went down, grabbed the frog, stuck it in my Ziploc bag, came out, showed it to the students, but we were getting ready to leave, and I needed a shower. And so I kind of missed the whole resolution, and I think I'm at that point where I need to resolve. Not every story needs a moral or resolution, but I think what I'm hearing also in some of these other ones is that bad luck, good luck, who's to say? I think for most of us that have a bad luck story, we also have a lot more good luck stories. So thank you for letting me share this one tonight.
Thanks, Stan. And I'd like to give a shout out to that back table that are filled with some of my best friends. Thank you. Kim, Brian, Jenny, Matt. Next up is, I would say, a treasure here on the North Shore. He is the music director for the orchestra at Brockport High School, Middle School, and Elementary School. Please welcome, with a great heart, Nathan Cohen.
I was sure that wasn't going to be me. Thanks. The first thing you need to know is that Burt Bacharach loves the strings. I had the very good fortune in 2008 of being invited by a producer from Rounder Records in Cambridge to record on a project. It was a project by blues legend from New Orleans, Irma Thomas, and she's amazing. And the project was called Simply Grand, and the concept was that there was a different incredible pianist on each of the tracks of the discs. So there was John Medeski from Medeski, Martin and Wood. There was Nora Jones. There was Randy Newman, David Turkanowski. The list went on. Ellis Marsalis. It was a step up from the other projects that I'd been doing in the studio. So maybe this was my big break. It was my lucky break, maybe. I love that story that Stan was hinting at about the Chinese parable about the farmer. This is a story that my mother told me. Maybe not everybody knows it. I'm going to try to tell it really quickly. There's a Chinese farmer, and his horse runs away, and the neighbors come by to console him, and they say, how are you going to do your work? Your horse has run off. What terrible luck. And the farmer says, maybe. And then the next day, the horse comes back, but it's found some friends, so there's these wild horses with it, and now the farmer has 4 horses. And the neighbors come by and say, you have all these horses, what incredible luck you have. And the farmer says, maybe. And the next day, the farmer's son is trying to ride one of the horses and is bucked off and breaks his leg, and the neighbors say, oh no, you've lost your son who's supposed to be working in the field. What terrible luck. And the farmer said, maybe. And then the next day, the military officials come to draft the young men into the army, and they pass by the kid's son because he's got the broken leg, and the neighbors, bereft of their children, come and say, "What incredible luck you have." Maybe. So Burt Bacharach had written a track for the Irma Thomas record. Remember, Burt Bacharach loves the strings. So I'm asked not only to put together a string quartet for the album, but also to compose the string tracks just for the track. And I was pretty psyched. I got a fax at school from Burt Bacharach with the chart, and the chords were pretty straightforward. I felt really good about it. The only problem was that it was one of the busiest weeks of my life. I love my job and I love my work, and every once in a while there's a week where there's 700 things to do and there's not a spare moment. But I wasn't saying no to this gig. So I had precious few moments, and I used those precious few moments to write a string track. Felt pretty good about it. It was lovely. Friday comes, I've survived my week, I'm ready to go into the session, and it's just before I'm about to jump in the car that I say, you know what I should probably do is listen to the track with Irma actually on it and just make sure that my part that I wrote fits with it. And there's something extraordinarily bad about that when I put them on together. And so I hurriedly write a second part, and hoping that everything's great, I go into the studio. And I arrive at the studio, and we lay down the first track, and it's an incredible shit show. It is just as mortifying an experience as one can have. It was sort of like this naked at school kind of situation. And but I'd written a backup track, right? So I offer up my backup track, and the engineer says, "Oh yeah, we're going to need the backup track." So we lay down the second track, and the mistake that I have made in the first track, I repeated in the second track. And so the backup track is a shittier version of the first track. Now, I'm not quite sure which is worse. There were 4 very talented friends, 3 including me, 4 including me, 1, never mind. So there were 4 of us sharing in this horrible moment, and they were so excited to be on this record. And I was letting them down. I was really worried that we were just going to be scrapped entirely. One of those people was a former violin teacher of mine whose opinion I valued very highly, who is now witness to this disaster. Also, there were about 10 other people in the studio. Usually when there's a recording session, you've got musicians in one room, and then the glass fishbowl wall, and then an engineer in the other room. And for some reason, one of the heads of Rounder Records was there. There was the producer who hired us. There were 2 or 3 engineers, and then there was a crowd. And so there was this incredible throng of people witnessing this. So I blew the gig. The gig is done, and I am speechless. Thank you. So the next 3 hours play by agonizingly, as note by note, the 10 musicians in the room construct a strings part. You know, Burt Bacharach loves the strings. What are we going to do if he doesn't have his strings? So there are some young people here who may not know who Burt Bacharach is. He's kind of a legend. He's got 6 or so Grammys and 3 Academy Awards, and he loves the strings. So hours pass. We have a string part finally, but we are exhausted, and the energy is flat. We lay down what we have, and I leave. And the next day, I call the producer because I'm pretty worried that he's going to pull the track. And indeed, we're not going to be on the disc. And I offer to bring the quartet back in at my own expense to try to make up for it because I really want these guys to be on the disc. And he is kind to me. He's kinder than I deserve. And he explains to me that they actually went through 10 different drummers on the CD and that this is just part of the business and not to worry about it. But under no circumstance are we coming back into the studio. I know this is supposed to be about bad luck, and do I really think that it was my bad luck that caused me to blow this gig? Maybe. I would say that maybe it was a combination of inexperience and failure to prioritize my time and maybe self-sabotage. I'm not sure. But an interesting thing happened. A couple days later, I got a phone call from the producer. I missed the call. It was a message. And the message said, Nathan, I just heard some interesting news that I think you're going to enjoy. I just got off the phone with Burt Bacharach. And Burt Bacharach loves the Strings. So not only are we on the disc, but this CD ends up being nominated for a Grammy. So my without a doubt lowest professional moment is nominated for the highest award in our field. And that got me to thinking, had Burt Bacharach heard the original thing that I had written, would he have liked it? Maybe. And had I nailed that gig, had that been a total success, would that have opened professional doors for me? Maybe. And had I gone down a different path, would my life be different now? Maybe. Would I perhaps not have connected with my beautiful wife, who's about to give birth to our first child in a couple of months? Maybe. And should I maybe not worry about it too much and just be grateful that Burt Bacharach loves the Strings? Probably. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathan. Our next storyteller is a special guest here with us tonight, Jimmy Tarantino. You know him from Gloucester. He's a great character, and I'm privileged to call him my friend. And please welcome Jimmy T.
Little help. I got greasy hands. I'm nervous. I'll just be loud like I usually am. So I was going to tell the story about the farmer with the horse, and it already got told, which already got told twice, but we'll incorporate that in later. Thank God I don't go by script. I just shoot from the hip anyway. So when Maureen was kind enough to give me another opportunity to talk, I said, yeah, I love doing fishtails. I always love a microphone and a captive audience. So shut that right off right now. But then she told me the category was bad luck, and I'm like, you know what, Maureen, I'm not about bad luck. I don't think I have anything, and I wasn't going to do it until this week. I had a epiphany. Is that the right word? Anyway, I thought of some things I know lots about bad luck. I got taught when I first went fishing offshore on the fishing vessel Captain Gus, the Captain Dominic Sanfilippo. It's funny, it's typical Gloucester Sicilian. He's the captain of the Captain Gus, and his brother Gus is the captain of the Captain Dominic. But anyway, Dominic Sanfilippo, the captain of the Captain Gus, taught me on my first trip offshore fishing everything I needed to know about bad luck. I being a hard worker and wanting to do good for my friend, went right to work, and he says, get out of the hole. The fish hold holds all the frozen bait we're going to use. We're offshore fishing. Go down and bring up 6 boxes of bait to thaw out when we get on the fishing grounds. So he's walking across the deck, and I open up the hatch and flip the hatch cover over, and he slaps me in the back of the head. He goes, Sturado! Never flip the hatch cover over. It's bad luck. Now, the guy's half my size. I could have given him a beating right there, but he's a friend and he's the captain, so I'm sorry. And he's right. You know, well, the captain's always right, so I learned never tip the hatch cover over. Later on, as we get to the fishing grounds, we're in the galley, and we got some byster or something. I took the loaf of bread, and you probably know some of these stories, Virginia, from your husband fishing. I put the bread down, and I put it down upside down, and I got another slap in the back of the head. Badada! Never turn the bread upside down. It's bad luck. So I was getting whacked in the back of the head my whole first trip. I learned everything I needed to know about bad luck. You never say the word pig. I think I was referring to a promiscuous young lady I knew in my younger years. Whack in the back of the head. You never whistle, it brings up a gale. There's all kinds of no whistling on a ship. That's a commonly known for you, the guys that know nautical stuff. So there's all these bad luck things, and I learned them all, and I respected them all, and did what the captain wanted me to. But in my later years and recently, in most of the stories you'll hear, I'm going to tell a couple of brief stories. Let's face it, folks. Bad luck is bullshit. It's a crutch and an excuse for people that feel bad for themselves. Cindy, when she knew that she was just attracted crackheads and losers, got nothing but crackheads and losers. As soon as she decided, you know what, I'm better than this, I need better, she found her husband, and she's been happily in love ever since. Rebecca, the chemistry teacher, thought they're always going to do lousy things until she said, you know what, I'm going to work harder and do better. And the bottom line is karma is real, people. It's like the setting sun. This is real. If you go out and you're a kind person and you do good things will happen. If you do bad things to people, you're going to have some bad things. Yeah, I'm not going with that. So later on, and to prove my point, my good friend Gus Sanfilippo, when I was fishing with him one time, he went overboard. It was really bad weather. Now, this was on the Captain Dominic. The deck hose is a hose that's constantly running on deck. You constantly need water, so it pumps salt water throughout the deck. You can wash the stuff out the skeppers, you can wash the guts, you can wash yourself. The deck hose is constantly running. And the deck hose on the Captain Dominic, if you went all the way aft, would sometimes come disconnected because the clamp hose, the piece of metal that the whole deck hose clamped onto, was bent. So it never really held tight. You bite it down as hard as you could, but you knew when you go on the back deck to be careful, because if you pull it too hard, it's going to come off, and then you got to go get a screwdriver. So just be careful on the deck hose. So when Gus Sanfilippo, who is a good person and a kind person and a good-hearted soul, went overboard and had his life flashing before his eyes, this is a true story. He's scratching. It's a big boat, the Captain Dominic, so you can't just grab and climb back up. He was scratching for anything he could because he knew you got a couple 15, 20 minutes before hypothermia sets in and you're dead if they don't notice him and get him. So he was scratching as the boat was going by, and his luck would have it, hanging out of the scupper was the deck hose. And it was the one thing he had to cling to. But him, I believe, being the good, calmer person that he is, grabbed on and the thing held fast. And the captain, he's screaming, and Frank Alloy yelled, "Guys, man overboard, man!" And they took it out of gear and they put him back aboard. But was it good luck that deck hose was there? That deck hose that even if you just gave it one tug like that would come undone on the back of the deck. But it held fast for Gus Sanfilippo. True story. Recently, my wife and I were asked to leave our home of 20-some-odd years down the fort, where, unfortunately, probably many people will be moving out of there soon. And it was a devastating experience for us. There were all kinds of emotions of hatred and anger and resentment. And, how could this, we paid every time. We were good tenants, we're loving people, we cared for and about the neighborhood, did a lot for everybody in the neighborhood. And it was very confusing, frustrating time for us. But within a couple of days, we talked about it and we realized, you know what? We got to move forward. We got to think positively. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If we dwelled on all that hate and thing, then certainly bad things would have happened. But we had some friends and family visiting. Somebody said a prayer for us. Next thing I know, another angel showed up at the gate and said, "Come live with me." It was my godparents' kid. And 2 months later, all those things are forgotten. We didn't cling to that. And we had good karma. And we found a beautiful home. And we both got good luck. I was given a free trip from a charity that I've done thing. They wanted me there. She was given a free trip by a friend who loved it, who she's done a lot for. And good things and good luck happen to good people. So Maureen's right. I'm not going to do bad stuff. I can tell you a fact. You want good fortune, you go out and you create it for yourself. Because if you go out and you're good in the world, then good things are going to happen. So good luck.
Yeah, Jimmy. Here's a guy who I think likes to have the last word. I think. Jim Dowd.
How's everybody doing? You hear me okay? So, 1994, I go to Israel to build the first artificial rock climbing tower there, which is obviously something they need. And it's a weird time. Anyone who's been there kind of knows that the country is like the size of New Jersey, right? I mean, you could invade this country on a skateboard, right? And so it's kind of an ongoing, all the time military operation there with kind of a country happening at the same time, which makes it sort of a weird place to be when you're from here. And so you're there, and what it reminded me of recently is why I thought of this story was it's kind of like the winter, just sort of an ongoing, all the time war, right? But you're kind of sick of it, you know? It's like I'm trying to pour the footings for this thing. Oh, is that a rocket attack? Oh, for God's sakes! Come on. All right, we'll go to the bomb shelter. Shit. Right, and this is just how you're going to the grocery store and they're setting up a Patriot missile battery, and like people are like, get out of the way! Come on, move these warheads! I'm trying to get some matzah. Come on, move it! And you're like, Jesus Christ, this is crazy. So I'm there and I'm helping doing this stuff on this kibbutz we're building. It's a conference center, and we're building this very large climbing tower up there, and they sort of breakfast, bread and breakfast as well. They take people from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. They go up there. They spend weeks there, and they also have like fun weekends. And so as after Passover, they had all these Orthodox folks up there. They actually koshered the place with a blowtorch, which was an interesting process. And so after everyone leaves, anyone who's ever worked in hospitality knows as soon as everyone leaves, the hospitality people go and have their holiday. So everyone ditches, and it's like me and like this sort of randos, right? It's like the few people left behind, and one of the people left behind is my client, was a friend, his wife and their young baby, and she's in that like first baby couple of weeks, and they're just like, God, I'm so tired. There's no one to help. I'm like, this is a kibbutz. How is there no one to help? This is the whole point of this thing, I thought. But it's like, aren't we all helping? But so it's kind of like everyone's kind of gone. But Richard, who's on his military rotation, so everyone's in the army in Israel, right? So he's gone for like a few days, but he kind of sneaks off, right? His buddies are like, we'll cover for you. They're like up on the border of Lebanon. You just go home, right? And so he hitchhikes home, and he falls off a truck, and he breaks his leg. This was bad luck, actually. This was not like, maybe we'll see. This was actual bad luck. This was there's none of this horse crap thing happening here. His leg is the size of a rolled up beach towel, okay? And he's this skinny little guy, and like he's screwed. Like we got him to the hospital. It's midnight. And so, like, again, there's nobody there. There's like these two weird Russian guys who don't talk, and so we can't, okay. The woman with the baby, there's a guy who's on, like, older guy who's on chemo kind of thing. So I'm like, all right, I'll drive him to the hospital. But see, I just can't take him to the hospital because he's kind of in the army, right? He's AWOL. So we just can't, like, take him to the emergency room. We got to go to the army base, okay? So I'm like, I'll take him. It's cool. And the guy's like, you cannot take him to the army base because driving in Israel is terrible. I'm like, driving in Israel I'm from Boston. Okay? We're the worst drivers. I'm from north of Boston. Have you heard of Route 1? They'll pass your ass in a car washer on Route 1. And this pause, and he goes, I went to grad school in Boston. He's right. They're terrible. He can drive. I'm like, all right. So the only thing I need to know is what do you say when someone does something dumbass in front of you? Nefolti arosh. What does that mean? Were you dropped on your head? Okay, all right, cool. I got it. So now I'm driving. We get this windowless van, and it's like midnight. I'm driving. I'm like passing like squadrons of tanks on like these like flatbed trucks. Nefolti arosh! Get out of my way, you tank guys! Come on. And the plan, such as it was that we were going to get to the base, and we were going to find other people going into the base because I'm not supposed to be on an Israeli Defense Force base because I'm not like that's not for me. So if we're going to find someone else going in, and we're going to like transfer Richard to them, and he'll take them in, and he's back in the army, and everything's cool. Except it's now 2 a.m, and there's no one going into the base. And so we're kind of approaching this huge lighted thing with these armored personnel carriers with machine guns, and I'm like, this plan isn't working. I'm going to slow down. And he's like, don't slow down. They'll think we're a bomb. I'm like, so keep going. Just wave at them. I'm like, wave at them? Dismissively, but not too dismissive. Okay, so they're like, stop. I'm like, stop. We just drive through them like this windowless van. Like, this is how security was in Israel. Okay, fine. So we drive to the hospital, and we get in there, and so I get him into the hospital. Yay, we've got him in the hospital. And like I'm carrying him like it's like Band of Brothers. Like I get him into this thing. And they're gonna take him. He needs an X-ray. Yeah, no. Hey, look at his foot. Yeah, okay, sure. So they hand me his gun. It's an M16, right? And his ammo, because he can't take that in X-ray, and his gear, the helmet and crap. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. But this isn't like Beverly. Like this isn't like wait, like Dr. Oz is on and I'll just like read the Israeli people or something, right? And like this is like I gotta go out into the parking lot. So I'm standing out in the parking lot of the Middle East. And this is just a quick political aside. The Israeli military does not carry their weapons with their loaded. So those guys in like Walmart and like Texas who are like walking with loaded guns, the most trained military in the world doesn't do that because that's stupid. Just quick. Okay. So I'm standing out in this parking lot, and apparently I didn't have my karma on correctly or something. I must have brought this on myself. But the alarm goes off. And people start running out of buildings with guns, putting the bullets in the guns. And for all I know, Syria is invaded. Like this is it, right? Paratroop, what the fuck is going on? Right, this is terrible, right? And people are running around, and turns out someone had tried to infiltrate the base with a hang glider. Like, I just infiltrated this base. All I have to do is this. This isn't a hang glider, but it becomes instantly, anyone who's ever worked for a not-for-profit knows exactly what happened here, right? There's somebody who gave a lot of money, a sheik or something. And, have you ever thought about the hang glider? No, don't. He gives a lot of money. Just do the hang glider thing, right? Right? Just do the hang. Ahmed, you're up. Go do the. Oh God. So this didn't work out well at all. The hang glider thing didn't work, but so they thought it was a diversion or whatever. So everyone is now run out and like they're loading the guns and I was gonna go just sit in the van, but like they're like come. So important thing. This is the shirt I was wearing. And the hat. Okay, I look like the head boy of Gryffindor, right? Right? Okay? I'm not, these people are all like military garb. There's like helicopters dropping flares, and I'm like running with these guys, and I just down like with this, I put the bullets in the gun, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? It's like pointing down the range, like the whole like border of the base is lit up like Fenway, and I'm just like, okay, and I'm like, it was like the most like alone moment of my life, and I remember just like every movie you ever see is like a band of brothers again. You're like, these guys were all together, and I'm not together with anyone. I'm perfectly alone, wondering if I'm gonna have to actually fire this thing, which I've never, since camp or something. And I remember the only thing that sort of let me know it was gonna be okay was when I heard somebody going, I don't know what they're Hebrew, right? Another guy laughs and he goes, "Nefalti Rosh," right? And so I know that's Nefalti. It's funny, and people are laughing like, okay, we're gonna be okay here. It's all gonna be fine. They signal the all clear, and I stand up, and now I don't know how to get the magazine out of the gun. I'm like an old guy with a VCR. It's a lot of buttons on this thing. And this soldier comes. Oh, this is the end. So the soldier comes over to me, and this big, huge guy, the beard. And I think he's older. He's probably my age now, and he's coming towards me, and I'm like, he goes, wait, and don't move. In English, don't move. I'm like, okay, I won't move. This is it, right? This is where they take me to the small room and like, what are you? What are you doing with this gun? How did you infiltrate this base with the waving, right? But he looks at me and he just takes the thing, and he pulls the bullets out and he looks at it, makes sure I haven't actually loaded it, which I have not, and hands it back to me and he says, "Are you from Boston? My sister went to Brandeis." And I'm wearing the hat. And we talk about the Red Sox for like 5 minutes. I think Mo Vaughn had just joined the team at that point. I thought, hey, Mo Vaughn, yes. I prefer the Yankees. That's great. No, the Yankees are great. I was never happier. So that was it. Yeah. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jim. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Our next show is May 22nd, Friday, May 22nd, here. And it's going to be rock and roll fishtails. It's going to be a great night. It's going to be a good party. So I hope to see you all there then. Yeah. It's going to be your birthday. So show up at the next one, and also take a look at gloucesterwriters.org, which is the website for the Gloucester Writers Center. We'll see you at the next show. Thanks.